What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined once again by my co-host, Alex Wilson. So happy to have him back. And today we're going to be talking about the New York Giants, but focusing in on a few players who are entering make or break campaigns in 2025, certain players who are in a contract year or entering a crucial season where they just need to prove themselves before they get phased out of the starting lineup. That's going to be the topic of discussion today. We have a lot of optimism going into 2025. Feel pretty good about this New York Giants team, but that doesn't mean it's without its questions. There are some massive question marks at some crucial positions for the Giants on the offensive line, in the secondary, in the receiving core. And so we're going to talk about some of those players who have question marks surrounding them entering training camp at the end of this month and going into the 2025 season. But before we dive into all that, Alex, it's good to have you back, man. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. Very happy to be back. I should be back more frequently, as usual on the channel moving forward. Been bouncing around quite a bit, but now settling down in a base. So, I'm excited to get back talking to the Giants. And obviously, it's a quiet period for this team. It's a quiet period for every team. Although there are some crazy trades happening, like Jalen Ramsey to the Steelers, and Minka Fitzpatrick to the Dolphins. What a crazy twist of events that ended up being. So there is some big blockbuster things happening in the NFL every now and then. But right now for the Giants, it's just waiting, being patient. There's a lot of hype, a lot of optimism about this team right now. We're excited to be a part of it, excited to be somewhat competent on paper. Obviously, got to do it on the football field, but we have the talent to be a solid football team. I'm not going to say a great one, but one trending in the right direction. And honestly, that's enough for me at this point as a Giants fan, just trending in the right direction. But yeah, there's some guys on this team, make or break seasons for them. The first one you want to talk about, I know, Evan Neal. So I'll let you get started on him.
Yeah, actually, before we get into Evan Neal, obviously everybody can see that he's on the cover, and we have to talk about Evan Neal as a make or break player. But I actually want to focus in on the receiving core first because I want to tie it into an update from today. A lot of Giants fans have been commenting on our social media, on the comment section of the YouTube, talking about Odell Beckham Jr. And I did a couple episodes already where I discussed OBJ. Could the Giants bring him back? What would that look like? Is it realistic? But today we did get an update from ESPN's Jordan Rannon. He said that he spoke to some people inside the building. He called it, quote unquote, unlikely that Odell Beckham Jr. will return to the New York Giants. He said that that's something that he's not hearing as a realistic possibility for the Giants. Maybe somewhere along the lines or down the line, Odell could potentially sign a one-day contract to retire a Giant, but right now it doesn't sound like the Giants have any interest in actually signing him to their roster, having him compete during the preseason training camp or even the regular season for that matter. So that's the update on OBJ. I know a lot of Giants fans are going to be really happy to hear that, and a lot of Giants fans are going to be really sad to hear that. I'm more on the sad side of things because I love OBJ and would have loved to see him come back for one last dance. But nevertheless, that's going to transition me into this wide receiver room because Giants fans wanted to add OBJ because of question marks in this receiving core, right? And one of those players that we have question marks about, Wandale Robinson, because he is entering the final season of his contract. What does the long-term outlook look like for Wandale Robinson? Last season, he had a career year. He had 699 receiving yards on like 90-something targets. He had a bunch of receptions, but only averaged 5.5 yards per reception. So a good year, but a lot left on the table, a lot of meat left on the bone for Wandale Robinson last season. Now, with this contract year, is he going to perform well and get that Khalil Shakir money, or is he going to fall flat and maybe become a player who doesn't really get that big payday next offseason? And then where do the Giants land in the middle of that? How much are they willing to pay for their slot receiver in Wandale Robinson, the former second-round pick? So a make-or-break year for Wandale Robinson. But Alex, tell me why you think he will or won't make/break this upcoming season as he plays with Russell Wilson as his new quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you have 92 receptions, you need to have more than 699 yards. Like that indicates to me the Giants were just getting him the ball, hot reads. Like it was just an offense that could not move the football. So they were just giving it to, guys that could do something after the catch. And at this point, Wandale, I like Wandale. I think he's a good player. I think he's tough as nails. I think he's fearless. I think he can do stuff after the catch. And I think his role has been under kind of utilized, you could say. 132 targets. He should not have that many targets, right? That is not healthy for a slot receiver of his caliber to have that many targets. I think that he should be hovering in the 90 range, and that his usage should be more strategic. They just gave him the ball and just hope for the best. They need to get him the ball in space. They need to scheme him the ball and maximize his skill set after the catch. So, that's kind of where I see Robinson's usage and productivity, kind of skyrocketing this year. Russell Wilson is much better than Daniel Jones and is much better than Drew Lock. So on paper, yeah, like Robinson should have a much better season. He should be more productive. They should be utilizing him in more facets. And, whether it's the screen game, short concepts, even downfield, who knows how they'll really deploy him. But I think that he will cross 700 yards on far fewer targets because they'll use him more strategically and get him the ball into space where he can operate instead of just get hit immediately and, average such a small amount per reception. But if he does put together a solid season, I don't think it's crazy to think the Giants will extend him. And the reason I think that is because the Giants have gotten in the habit of letting draft picks go in free agency. And I think that Joe Schoen needs to be, and I think he knows this, a little bit more confident in the guys that he drafts, and they have to get second contracts at times. I know you don't want to just hand them out left and right, but Robinson is good enough. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought him back on a reasonable deal. And I think that it would be in Shane's best interest to do so, just because he's got to reinvest in some of his homegrown players. He can't always be trying to fix problems with free agents like we just did with Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland.
Yeah, I'll say this, though, about Wan'Dale Robinson. I think that the Giants could potentially try and extend him because he is a homegrown talent, and I think they want to make more of a priority in extending guys like that. But they do have a lot invested already. I mean, $12 million per season to Darius Slayton. They have a contract on the horizon, of course, for Malik Neighbors in a few years. I wonder how much they're willing to spend at the wide receiver position while they know that they have some other contracts at that spot to pay down the line. So that's going to be interesting for me to see. But also interesting to see will be Wan'Dale Robinson's usage this season. Like you mentioned, you expect him to have more yardage on less targets and less receptions, and I agree with you. And one of the things that I keep mentioning is last season, how many times did we see an instance where Wan'Dale Robinson would catch a pass 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage, but he had to slow down to make the catch, or it was behind him, it was not on time, or it was inaccurate, and he was tackled immediately. And then you think about other times in the past where he has caught it in stride and then picked up an additional 10 to 15 yards after the catch, because he is quite a bit of a weapon with the ball in his hands. But last season, that quarterback room of Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito, and Tim Boyle, a lot of inaccuracy and a lot of off-time throws really made it difficult for Wan'Dale to catch the ball in stride and create yards after the catch. And so now I'm hoping that this season, with a veteran quarterback like Russell Wilson under center, that ball will be on time. That ball will be accurate. These passes will be caught in stride, and we'll get more yards after the catch and big play opportunities, even on those 2-yard passes. And the example that I always like to bring up is Wan'Dale catches that pass 2 yards in front of the line of scrimmage and is immediately tackled. And now it's 3rd and 8. Whereas if it was in stride and he was able to pick up a few extra yards, then it's 3rd and 4. And 3rd and 4 and 3rd and 8, it's a massive difference in how that changes your playbook and the plays that you're able to call in that situation, or in those two situations rather. So I think it's going to be a much better year for Wan'Dale Robinson in terms of make or break. I'm going to vote on the side of make. I think he's going to have a solid season. I think it's all going to have to do with the improved quarterback position for the New York Giants. But then again, how much would the Giants be willing to pay him? And I also think another thing you have to keep in mind, if he ends up pushing to get that Khalil Shakir money, is making $13 million per season as an example, somewhere in that range where Shakir is it worth paying Wan'Dale somewhere in that range? Or would you rather just pay the $20 million plus per season to get a more high profile WR2 on the open market and try and upgrade at the position? So that's going to be a big question mark to watch as we get through the season and as we evaluate Wan'Dale Robinson in the final year of his rookie season. But let's jump over to that offensive line and finally talk about Evan Neal, who you mentioned at the top of the show, Alex. This is a guy who's making a transition, a former top 10 pick who has wildly underperformed through the first 3 seasons of his career. However, at minicamp, at OTAs, seemingly started to show some progress, received a lot of praise, not only from the Giants coaching staff, but even from the media in attendance. A lot of people had good things to say about Evan Neal. There were some reports stating that he was having that first man in, last man out mentality, right? Putting in the extra work as he makes the transition from right tackle to left guard. And we know that of all the players on the Giants roster, it's probably most make or break for Evan Neal. He was a former top 10 pick. He was meant to be a cornerstone right tackle of the future. Hasn't even come close. Injuries have gotten in the way, but when he's been on the field and healthy, for the most part, he's been a liability. However, what I will say on a positive side of things for Evan Neal, 2 things. Number one, last year down the stretch of the season, when he did get to start some games, I thought we saw him play the best football of his career so far. If you think back to that game against the Panthers and a few others down the stretch where his run blocking was notably improved, and even his pass protection wasn't noticeably as bad. So I thought he had some good moments last year. And then the other factor that I think is helping him, moving back to the left side of the line, where I think he's always been more comfortable. If you look at his collegiate career, he started his freshman season at left guard. His junior season, which is where he earned his status as a top 10 pick, was playing left tackle. The season in between, that sophomore season, was at right tackle, and that was arguably his worst season. So he seems like a player who was making strides last year, but also a player who's always been more comfortable on the left side of the line. So could the stars finally be aligning for Evan Neal to perform better and have a breakout season? Potentially, but he's going to need the opportunity, and he is going to start the season out as a backup and likely a healthy scratch like he was last year. So it's going to be a long road ahead, but if Evan Neal can work hard, perhaps he sneaks his way into the lineup and maybe he can make something of that. So Alex, what are your expectations for Evan Neal, make or break this year? And again, with that transition over to the left side of the line, do you think that he's going to be more comfortable there, and could that spark some growth?
I mean, he doesn't have much time, right? So if he looks good, I mean, right now we're both kind of labeling him as a backup. I think that's valid. And if he grows and becomes a competent backup, I think we get some value out of him. I'm not looking at him as a starter. We don't have years left to wait for him. He's got to become a competent backup now. So the course of the season, we'll see how things progress. But Evan Neal's story is largely unwritten. I think he will end up with another team competing for a starting spot elsewhere in 2026. But for now, that transition to left guard, it really helps him. It helps him expand his versatility in terms of when he does look for a new home at some point in the future. He'll at least have some experience at guard. And I think another team will be willing to bank on that. Like, we saw the Eagles do it with Mekhi Becton, and other teams do it as well. So I think that, his future is certainly unwritten. But right now he's trying to develop in real time and at a new position. And I think that experience he does have at on the left side is good for him. And at the very least, he can be a backup to John Runyon. He can be a backup at right tackle. He'd be a backup at right guard, whatever. Like, that's enough value for me to say, okay, like he can play a part on this team. Like, he can be a contributor. Just, you don't want to see him. Like, he's the type of player right now that I don't want to see him starting, because I know he's behind the curve, but it's not a bad thing to have a guy with some upside that is, competent at several different spots. Arguably competent. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I am interested to see how he grows. And I know, like you said, the work ethic is there. The coaching staff has been impressed so far, but we've heard this story before. I need to see it for my own eyes against competent competition, and then we'll determine if he can be a valuable piece to this team.
Yeah, and honestly, let's see if he can become a valuable piece. You're right, but I do think that we could see a path where he gets on the field because of the Giants' lack of upgrades at right guard. I don't think that Evan Neal's competing at right guard. I think the Giants are going to have him stick to left guard, focus in on that position, and try to become competent at that position. However, if Greg Van Roten struggles this season or gets injured, whatever the case might be, the Giants not adding any talent to the right guard position leads me to believe that it would be John Runyon who then flips to right guard, where he does have some experience, and that's probably how we see Evan Neal take the field at left guard this season. So there is a pretty clear and obvious path for Neal to get on the field, but if that happens, if he does get on the field, we need to see the best version of Evan Neal that we've ever seen. Otherwise, that make or break is going to be an obvious break season, is going to be a rough one for him, and his time with the Giants will likely come to an end after 2025 unless he's able to prove something when he does see the field this year, which does feel kind of inevitable because of the injuries that the Giants have had on the offensive line over the last few years. But flipping back over to the defensive side of the ball, Alex, let's talk about the secondary. I just did a great interview with Brian Walker, D-Backs Academy. Guys, go check that out on the channel if you haven't already. He's an NFL and collegiate defensive backs coach and trainer. Right now, he's working with Andre Cisco of the New York Jets safety. He was posting some stuff about that on his social media that was really interesting to see. But he also gave me some great insight on the Giants secondary, talking about some of the differences with Xavier McKinney, who he used to coach in the past, and how that's going to be a transition from him to having really nobody to fill in last year, and now Javon Holland. Really great insights there. But Deontay Banks was a big part of the conversation that I had with Brian Walker, because he is entering a make or break season in the eyes of myself and really all Giants fans. 2023 rookie season showed some flashes, but there was still plenty to improve on. 2024 took a major step backwards, and that regression leads everybody to be concerned. But now going into 2025, moving back into that CB2 role with Paulson Adebo taking over CB1, Are we getting the bounce back season from Deontay Banks? And if not, what's next? Alex, what's your take on Deontay Banks as he enters what looks to be a very crucial make or break third season of his career?
Yeah, I think that Banks is going to recover to a large degree, and the main reason for that is he lacked leadership last year. They traded Xavier McKinney. That was like his best buddy in the secondary, kept him kind of honest and really helped rally the troops. They lost that. They didn't have anyone. Banks was left kind of defend for himself. They threw him into the fire, expecting him to tread water, and he just could not do it on his own. They changed the scheme again. Obviously, Shane Bowen's first year. It just was a recipe for disaster. Do I blame Deontay Banks for some of the problems that he had? Absolutely. Turning his head, that was a problem. But the Giants set that poor kid up for failure, and I will stand by that take. They destroyed any chance of that guy panning out in his second year. They changed the scheme, traded his leader. Like, you can't do any more to destroy a young kid's confidence than that. Now they added Paulson Adebo. They protected him at CB1 so he can be the CB2. They added Javon Holland, who is a legitimate leader and safety that he can trust behind him. And he's in the second year of the same system. They changed the cornerback coach. That may be the interesting one variable that we have to consider there. But I think that they're much better situated for Banks to have a bounce back season and actually make some progress. Last year, they destroyed any sense of it. So that's why I do feel a bounce back year is coming. I don't know what that's going to look like. At the very least, I just wanted to see him be confident, play his game, be aggressive, have a couple interceptions, tackle well, to get his head turned around. And I think we'll see a much better player in the third year for Banks. So, that is something that I am anticipating. I am, definitely confident that he's going to turn things around and at least look like a good player, not great, but he'll show lots of progress. And I think, the reasons I listed are kind of the catalyst behind that, but they need him to be. They can't afford for him to be another liability.
No, they can't afford that at all. And like you said, turning his head around, that's the biggest thing for Deontay Banks. He needs to figure out that ball skill portion of his game, get that tracking and get that ability to find your spatial awareness, use the sideline as your friend and create some of these contested catch targets and opportunities and turn them into pass breakups and interceptions. Because, I think about so many plays last season where he was right there in coverage. The coverage was tight. He had a whole good rep up until the catch point. And that was really disappointing to see because when you're doing everything right and then that one final thing goes wrong, I'm sure that can be really frustrating for a young cornerback in your second season, especially with all that pressure on your shoulders as the CB1 in your second season. So knowing that Banks has some pressure taken off of his shoulders and knowing that he has one clear and obvious weakness to kind of focus in on and try and develop this summer, hopefully that is the focus for him and hopefully that leads to an improved 2025 season. So really looking forward to seeing Deontay Banks. As everybody knows, I'm a big Deontay Banks fan. I was prior to the draft when the Giants took him in 2023, and I'm really rooting for his success this upcoming season and hoping that he does have that bounce back. But Alex, anybody else come to mind here before we wrap this up? Some quick hitters. I know Jaylen Hyatt is a guy that some believe is make or break. I think there's somebody on the offensive line that you mentioned as well. Who else do you see as a make or break player going into 2025?
Yeah, Jaylen Hyatt's got to stay healthy. He's already has a hamstring injury, so that's important. He added 20 pounds to his frame. There's lots of hype going around, but again, need to see it to believe it. We've been kind of led astray by the optimism at times, and I think that there are players that are going to be very productive. Jaylen Hyatt's one of those guys that I got to see it. Like, I don't really care about the media attention. I don't really care about the extra weight. I need to see him put together competency and win 50-50 balls and beat his defender on the outside and the boundary and catch the damn football. Like, that's what matters to me at this point. So yeah, definitely a make or break season for him. I think the Giants would have added more depth at receiver if they didn't want to see what he had in the tank. So if he flounders, if he flops, they're going to add another piece next year to replace him basically. The guy in the offensive line that does make the most impact to me is JMS. John Michael Schmitz has to wake the hell up. He has to play well. This is his last chance. If he doesn't, I think the Giants should replace him because, undersized center, high IQ guy, you got Russell Wilson behind you, a guy that's going to lead. He's going to demand much more. And he's going to, obviously bring a level of leadership we haven't had in quite some time. So, I do think that JMS is positioned to have a nice season. I think that he has chemistry now with Greg Van Roten, has chemistry with John Runyon. There's lots to, consider when kind of saying like that progress should take a step forward, that there should be more development there, but this is his year. If he doesn't step up, he'll be replaced. So I definitely think he should be one of the, bigger make or break players on this list for sure. Because really the offensive line, he's the center has to be the glue. The center has to be the guy that kind of communicates and does all the little things. And he just hasn't done it well enough. And that's compromised the unit at times.
No, it definitely has. And as I've said before, I do think that Russell Wilson is going to have a transformative impact on everybody on the offense, but also John Michael Schmidt's taking some pressure off his shoulders, as now the quarterback can do a little bit more of that reading and diagnosing of the defense, the blitzers, and calling some of those protections at the line of scrimmage, being that Russell Wilson is such an experienced future Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. So a lot of make or break players on the New York Giants this year, plenty to discuss. And as we've said time and time again, all throughout now until training camp and through training camp, you can expect to see some more great discussions about the New York Giants, just like this one right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, and make sure you comment a big W down below for Alex's return to the channel. Without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go New York Giants.
Perfect.